Tonight begins before the first temple, before the first hero, before the first human name was ever whispered into the dark. Imagine a sky with no stars in it yet, a sea with no shore, and a silence so wide it feels like a room with no walls. The Greeks called that beginning chaos. Not chaos as in noise and mess, but as a deep, quiet gap where shape had not arrived. In that gap, without effort or announcement, the earliest powers simply appeared, as if the universe was slowly opening its eyes and deciding, gently, what it could become. Hello, and welcome. If quiet myths like this help you unwind, please take a small moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Only if it truly helps you rest. It supports the work, and it tells the gentle, invisible gods of the algorithm that calm stories are worth making. Now settle in, let your shoulders soften, and allow the world outside your room to feel far away. In the oldest list of beginnings, Gaia arrives. The earth itself, not a woman standing on the earth, but the ground becoming alive. Tartarus arrives too, the deep place under everything, a far down darkness, more a direction than a room. And Eros arrives, desire and connection, the force that makes things reach for one another instead of staying alone. Out of chaos also come night, called Nyx, and darkness, called Erebus, and then from them come Aether, the clear upper air, and Hemera, the bright day. It is like a slow painting, first the blank canvas, then a few colors, then the first lines that suggest a world. Gaia, wide and patient, begins to make a world. She raises the mountains, the first firm backs of stone, and she spreads the seas, a shining surface that will later carry ships and storms. She brings forth Pontus, the sea, and the Uria, the mountains, and she does it without struggle, like a thought becoming real. But Gaia does not want to lie under emptiness forever, so she creates the sky by herself. She brings forth Uranus, bright and vast, and he stretches over her in a constant embrace, a roof that never lifts. With Uranus above her, Gaia begins to fill the new cosmos with children. Their first great children are the Titans, 12 enormous beings, each tied to a part of the world's structure. Oceanus is the endless river that circles the earth. Coeus is the deep mind, the axis of inquiry. Creus is a pillar and a boundary, a steady strength. Hyperion is high light, the upper blaze of the sun, before the sun has a name. Iapetus is mortality and human fate, the line where divine life ends and human life begins. And Kronos is time, the youngest and, in many tellings, the sharpest. The Titan sisters are just as vast. Theia is shining sight and glittering ore, the brightness that will later flash in eyes and in metal. Rhea is flowing life and motherhood, the steady tide of birth. Themis is right order, law, and balance, the idea that things should fit together instead of breaking apart. Mnemosyne is memory, the quiet storehouse where songs and names are kept. Phoebe is clear mind and prophecy, a pale light of knowing. and Tethys is the nourishing waters, the calm strength that helps things grow. In some tellings, the Titans are not simply people. They are principles. They move like weather. When Oceanus shifts, waters find new paths. When Themis speaks, balance settles over the world like a blanket. When Mnemosyne holds a thought, it becomes a memory that can last for ages. And Kronos, youngest of the brothers, is time itself. Not the clock on a wall, but the slow pressure that changes all things. A mountain does not notice time, and yet it is shaped by time. A river does not plan to erode stone, and yet it does. That is Kronos, quiet and steady, and a little frightening, because nothing escapes him. But Uranus and Gaia also bring forth children that Uranus cannot accept. The Cyclopes are born, huge and strong, each with one great eye in the middle of the face, like a single round lamp of vision. Later poets will name them Brontes, Steropes, and Argus, thunder, lightning, and brightness. And you can almost hear a storm inside those names. And the Hecatoncheires are born too, the 100-handed ones, colossal beings with so many arms that the mind can barely hold the picture. They are Cottus, Briareus, and Gyges, living towers of strength. Uranus, though, does not behave like a gentle roof. He wants to be the only power above. He presses close to Gaia, and the stories make his closeness feel heavy. He does not want rivals, even if they are his own children. So when the strange, powerful ones are born, he pushes them down, away from light, away from breath. The earth groans under the weight of what is hidden. If you imagine the world as a body, it is as if the ribs cannot expand, as if every inhale hurts. Gaia endures, but endurance turns, slowly, into anger. Uranus looks at these children and feels fear, or disgust, or both. Instead of letting them breathe under the open sky, he forces them back down into Gaia, pushing them into her depths, as if the earth itself is a cage. Some tellings say he hides them in Tartarus, that far down darkness. Either way, Gaia is made to carry her children as pain. She is earth, and yet she is pressed and cramped, and her own body becomes a prison. If you have ever felt a worry sitting in your chest, heavy and unmoving, you can understand Gaia in a quiet way. She cannot run from what is inside her. She cannot forget it. She can only endure it. And then, slowly, decide that endurance is not enough. In these early stories, justice is not a courtroom. It is the world shifting, gradually, toward relief. Down in Tartarus, the hidden ones wait. The 100-handed giants do not forget the weight of being buried alive. The Cyclopes do not forget the feeling of darkness where their one eye cannot see. In later ages, these imprisoned beings will matter again, because myths love a long memory. A wrong done early can echo for a very long time. Like a bell, you strike once and hear long after the hand has moved away. Gaia shapes a sickle from hard stone, a curved blade made for a single brutal moment. Then she calls to her Titan children and asks who will rise against their father. One by one. They fall silent. Even the mighty are afraid to cut the sky. Only Kronos steps forward. Perhaps he is brave. Perhaps he is ambitious. Perhaps he simply listens to the steady ticking of time inside himself and knows that a father's rule cannot last forever. Gaia gives him the sickle, and together they prepare a trap. When night comes, Uranus descends to cover Gaia as he always does. Kronos waits in the darkness, hidden at the edge where sky meets earth. Then, in one swift act, he strikes. The Greeks do not hide from the harshness of their own stories. Kronos cuts Uranus, and the sky's rule is broken. It is a violent birth of a new era, and the universe, still young, learns what rebellion feels like. When Kronos waits with the sickle, the scene is told like a shadow play. There is no crowd, no cheering, only the sound of the sky lowering and the earth holding still. Uranus comes as he always does, confident, unaware, repeating the same motion that has always worked. And then the motion breaks. The sky is wounded, and the old order spills out. It is terrible, and yet in myth, it is also the first opening, the first space where the world can breathe. Sometimes change arrives like that. Not polite, not gentle, but final. From the blood that falls onto Gaia, new beings rise, as if violence itself has seeds. The Erinyes, the Furies, are born, dark spirits of vengeance who remember every broken oath. Giants rise too, huge figures of raw force, and nymphs of the ash trees, the Meliae, appear, quiet spirits of growing wood. Even pain becomes a source of life, because the myths are always turning one thing into another. And the part of Uranus that falls into the sea churns white foam. From that foam, later poets say, Aphrodite is formed, the goddess of love, arriving not from tenderness, but from the strange mixture of sea and salt and ancient power. It is an unsettling thought, and yet it has a calm truth in it. Love can rise from places you would not expect, and the world keeps making beauty, even when its beginnings are rough. With Uranus overthrown, Kronos becomes king, and the Titans rule the cosmos. Kronos takes Rhea as his queen. Later poets remember this reign as a golden age, a time before human sorrow, before wars, before the sharp edge of daily need. It is easy to imagine the world soft then, with mountains still settling, with rivers still deciding where to go, with forests thick and undisturbed, and with stars brighter because no city lights exist to dim them. The Titans govern in broad, simple ways. Oceanus is still a ring of water, steady and endless. Hyperion's light is a promise of sunrise. Themis is quiet balance, the sense that seasons can return and return again. Mnemosyne holds memory like a careful hand holding a flame, because without memory there can be no story, and without story there can be no meaning. On the surface, it feels peaceful, as if the cosmos is finally breathing evenly. The Golden Age under Kronos is sometimes described as a time when the earth gives freely. No one plants and worries. No one counts and saves. There are no borders drawn with spears. Whether or not that was ever meant to be true, it is a human dream placed into the mouth of the cosmos. The idea that there could be a time when life is simple and safe. And it is exactly that dream that fear threatens. Because fear makes even a rich world feel poor. But even in a golden age, fear can live quietly inside a ruler. Uranus, wounded and fading, leaves Kronos with a warning one day. A child of Kronos will overthrow him, the way Kronos overthrew his father. In myths, prophecies are like seeds. You can bury them. You can pretend they do not exist. But they sprout anyway. Kronos hears the warning and feels time turn against him. And because he is time, he knows too well that the future always arrives. So Kronos makes a choice that seems almost calm in its cruelty. Each time, Rhea bears a child. Kronos takes the newborn and swallows it whole. Not killed, not thrown away, but hidden inside himself, locked in a living prison. First comes Hestia, who will one day be goddess of the hearth, the quiet center of every home, and she vanishes into his darkness. Then comes Demeter, who will one day make grain rise from soil and teach humans the comfort of bread. Then Hera, who will one day wear a queen's crown and rule beside a thunderer. Then Hades, steady and shadowed. Then Poseidon, restless as the sea. Rhea's grief grows heavy, like wet cloth that will not dry. Each birth becomes a loss. She holds a baby for a moment, breath and warmth in her hands. And then the moment is taken away. The world above continues to look calm, because kings can swallow suffering and still keep a smooth face. But inside Rhea, something begins to harden, the way stone hardens under water. Slowly, over time, each swallowed child becomes, for Rhea, a silence in the house, a cradle that is never used, a name she cannot speak out loud. If you picture a palace on a hill, it may look grand from far away, but inside it can be empty, echoing, cold. Rhea keeps walking through that emptiness, day after day, until the emptiness itself teaches her what to do next. At last, Rhea becomes pregnant again, and she goes to Gaia for help, because Gaia has already taught the world that pressure leads to rebellion. Gaia listens, steady and ancient, and offers a plan. When the child is born, Rhea will hide it far away, beyond Kronos' sight. Many tellings place the hiding on Crete, in a cave on Mount Ida or Mount Dicte, where the air is cool and the stone is old. To cover the baby's cries, warriors called the curates will clash their shields, turning noise into a curtain. The curates, those shield-clashing guardians, are a curious detail in a bedtime story, because they are loud on purpose, yet even their loudness serves secrecy, and secrecy serves survival. They dance outside the cave in armor that flashes in the sun, striking bronze on bronze, making a storm of sound to anyone passing by. It seems like a ritual, a festival, something ordinary on an island that loves music and movement. But the real purpose is simple. Every cry from the hidden baby is swallowed by the ringing of shields. It is almost like the world is learning a new trick, a gentler kind of swallowing, where sound is taken instead of children. Inside the cave, the air stays cool. Water drips slowly, The baby's breath is small, but it is there, and it does not stop. When the time comes, Rhea gives birth in secret, and the child is named Zeus. She wraps a stone in swaddling cloth, the way a baby is wrapped, and she carries it to Kronos with a face that tries to look empty. Kronos, certain that he is swallowing the future again, takes the bundle and gulps it down. The stone slides into him, heavy and silent, and he does not notice the difference. Far away, in the Cretan cave, a hidden heartbeat begins to grow, small as a spark, steady as a drum, under your own breath. After the stone is swallowed, Rhea returns to Crete and stays near the hidden cave for a time. Some versions say nymphs care for the baby, soft-handed spirits of springs and trees. Some say a goat named Amalthea feeds him, and the sound of her hooves on rock becomes part of his earliest lullaby. Above the cave, bees make honey, and the scent of it drifts in warm threads. Outside, wind moves through pines, and the sea, not far away, keeps a slow rhythm, as if the island itself is breathing. Zeus grows there in secret, and the secret gives him patience. He learns to be quiet. He learns to watch. And while Kronos sits on his throne thinking he has eaten the future is learning to stand. Meanwhile, Kronos sleeps. If a god like him can be said to sleep at all, sometimes he hears a distant clashing, faint as wind, and he tells himself it is nothing. Sometimes he dreams of a child's laugh turning into thunder, and he wakes with his jaw tight. He thinks he has sealed the future inside his own body. But the future is outside, breathing, learning, waiting. Time can swallow many things, yet time cannot swallow itself. On Crete, the cave holds its secret, and the sea keeps murmuring its steady, soft rhythm, as if it is already practicing the sound of later storms. You can sleep while it grows. If your eyes are heavy, let them be heavy. We will not hurry. In the next part, the hidden child will rise into strength, and the long tightened peace will begin to crack, slowly, like ice under a steady warming sun. Zeus grows quietly on Crete, and the world does not yet notice. If you imagine him as a child, do not imagine a crowned ruler with lightning in his hands. Imagine a boy with salt on his skin from the sea breeze, listening more than speaking, learning the shape of things. The cave teaches him patience. The nymphs teach him gentleness. Amalthea the goat teaches him that even a small body can give steady strength. And the Curetes, clashing shields outside, teach him that protection can look like noise while the protected thing stays silent. As the years pass, Zeus becomes tall, then strong, then unmistakably awake. He learns the paths of the island, the cold springs in the hills, the warm stones that hold sunlight late into evening. He watches storms roll across the water and learns how the sky can change its mind in a moment. Sometimes he hears his mother, Rhea, speaking softly with Gaia, and he senses that his life is not only his own. He is a hidden answer to an old fear. He is a slow turning of the world toward a new shape. There is a certain kind of calm that comes from secrecy. When no one expects you, you are free to grow without interruption. Zeus learns to wait, but he also learns that waiting is not the same as surrender. Under the quiet, a plan begins to form. Not sharp and loud, but careful, like a hand choosing stones to build a path across a stream. When Zeus is grown enough, Rhea tells him what happened to his brothers and sisters. She tells him about the swallowed cradles, the empty rooms, the names that vanished into Kronos. Zeus listens, and his face does not harden into hate. Not yet. Instead, something steadier appears, a resolve that feels like the earth itself. In bedtime stories, we do not need to make vengeance exciting. We can let it be what it often is in myth, a return to balance, a correction of a wrong that has sat too long. Gaia advises caution, because Kronos is not only a king, but a force. He is time, and time does not like to be surprised. Still, time can be tricked. Just as a river can be guided by a new channel, Zeus seeks help among older powers. Many tellings speak of Métis, a tightness of wise counsel, a mind that knows how to slip through tight spaces. Some call her a goddess, some a titan, but in every version, she is clever. And her cleverness is the key that opens the first lock. Métis prepares a drink for Kronos, not a weapon meant to kill, but a potion meant to undo what was done. The idea is strange and almost gentle. Instead of striking Kronos down, Zeus will make him release what he has swallowed. It is as if the story is saying that the future is not destroyed, only hidden, and that hidden things can return. Zeus goes to Kronos not as an obvious challenger at first. In some versions, he comes in disguise, a cupbearer serving at the Titan court. Picture the scene as calm, almost ordinary, a hall of stone and bronze, Titans moving slowly, like mountains shifting, Kronos seated above, heavy with certainty. No one sees the danger in a young servant's hands. No one listens for the small tremor of change. Zeus offers the drink. Kronos takes it without suspicion. For a moment, nothing happens, and the silence stretches, long enough for your own breathing to slow. Then the potion works. Kronos begins to cough, then retch, and what he swallowed returns. Not as bones, not as ghosts, but alive. First comes the stone, the one he mistook for Zeus. It thuds onto the floor, blunt and harmless, like the proof of his mistake. Then, one by one, the children come back. Hestia emerges first, and you can imagine her as warmth returning to a cold house. Demeter follows, and with her comes the promise of harvest, of bread, of steady life. Hera follows, the future queen, eyes clear, remembering. Then Hades, quiet and deep, like the first shadow at sunset. Then Poseidon, sharp as sea wind, already restless. They stand together, newly released, and the Titan court feels suddenly smaller, as if the roof has lowered. Kronos is stunned, not only because he has been tricked, but because he is forced to face what he tried to erase. A swallowed child is not a solved problem. It is a future waiting in the dark. Now the future stands in front of him. The golden calm of the Titan age begins to crack, not with one loud sound, but with many small ones, like ice breaking on a river. Zeus speaks then, and his voice is not yet thunder, but it carries weight. He tells Kronos that the old fear ends here. He does not beg for a place. He claims it. And when Kronos refuses, the refusal is like a door slamming. What follows is not a simple fight between two people. It is a conflict between eras, between ways of holding power. The Titans are not all of one mind. Some remain loyal to Kronos, because loyalty is easier than change. Some hesitate, because they remember Gaia's pain and Uranus's fall, and know how quickly a throne can become a wound. Oceanus, the great river, often stays neutral in later tellings, as if water prefers to flow around conflict rather than through it. Themis, law and balance, leans toward what feels just. Mnemosyne, memory, holds the whole story in her quiet hands and watches. But Kronos gathers those who will stand with him. Alongside him are titans like Iapetus, and often Coeus, Crius, Hyperion, and others. Depending on the poet, they become the old guard, the weight of the past, the rulers who do not want to loosen their grip. Zeus gathers his released siblings, and he also gathers allies. The first and most important allies are the ones Uranus hid away, the Cyclopes and the 100-handed ones. Zeus goes down into the depths to free them. This journey is sometimes described like descending into the roots of the world. The air grows heavy, the light fades, sound becomes muffled, as if wrapped in cloth. And there, in the deep, the prisoners wait. When Zeus breaks their chains, it is not only a favor, it is an exchange, a debt repaid. In myth, help often comes from those you remember to release. The Cyclopes, grateful and fierce, forge gifts. They give Zeus the thunderbolt, not only a weapon, but a symbol of authority. They give Poseidon the trident, the power to stir the sea. They give Hades a helm of darkness, a hiddenness that can cover him like night. These are not merely tools. They are like the universe handing out roles, assigning each sibling a domain where they will one day settle. The 100-handed ones, the hecaton shares, rise like moving cliffs. Their many arms lift stones as if stones are feathers. Their return changes the balance of the coming war, because they are what Kronos tried to bury forever. The past has a way of returning in the shape of the things you tried to ignore. When those things rise, they do not come up quietly. Soon the world fills with conflict. The Titanomachy begins, the war between Titans and the younger gods. Yet in a calmer telling, you can imagine the war less as a continuous screaming battle and more as a long storm season. There are days of clashing and days of waiting. There are nights when everyone is still, listening to wind in the mountains, thinking of what may happen at dawn. Even a war has pauses, and in those pauses, breath returns. The battleground is vast. Some myths place it across Thessaly, across mountain ranges, across the edges of the sea. The sky itself seems involved. Thunder rolls, the earth shakes, waves rise and crash. It is not only armies fighting. It is elements pushing against one another, trying to decide which order will hold. Zeus throws thunderbolts, and the air lights up in sudden white. Poseidon stirs the sea, and waters rise into walls. Hades moves unseen, like a shadow slipping behind a curtain. The Titans respond with their own ancient power, hurling mountains, shaking the ground, pushing back with the weight of what has always been. The world that once felt young now feels strained, like a rope pulled tight. For 10 years, some poets say, the struggle continues. 10 years is a long time for humans, but for gods, it can still feel like a season. Still, even for immortals, repetition wears the mind. The war becomes a rhythm strike. Retreat, regroup, strike again. In such rhythms, a single decision can matter more than endless strength. At last, Zeus listens to Gaia again. Gaia tells him the same lesson she taught when she offered Kronos the sickle. Hidden power can change everything. So Zeus brings the 100-handed ones into the fight fully, and he gives them stone after stone to throw. A rain of mountains. Imagine it like this. If your mind is sleepy, countless hands lifting countless rocks, the air filled with slow, heavy arcs, the ground trembling each time they land. The Titans begin to falter, not because they are suddenly weak, but because the world itself is shifting. The younger gods fight with the freshness of a new era. The old gods fight with the weight of habit. And habit, in the end, is not always stronger than change. Kronos looks out at the battlefield and sees, perhaps for the first time, that time cannot pause time. The warning from Uranus comes back, not as words, but as a feeling in his bones. When the final turn comes, it is not described as a single heroic moment so much as a closing door. The Titans are defeated, and Zeus and his siblings claim the new order. Kronos and the leading Titans are bound and cast down into Tartarus, the deep place under everything. The 100-handed ones become their guards, living gates of strength. It is not a gentle end, but it is an end, and the universe seems to exhale. Some Titans, however, are not punished. The stories often spare those who did not fight, or those who represent necessary balances. Oceanus continues to flow. Themis remains close to Zeus, guiding order. Mnemosyne remains, because memory cannot be chained without breaking the story itself. In this way, the new era is not total erasure. It is a rearranging, a new structure built from old materials. After the war, the world is quieter, but it is not perfectly calm. The victory leaves rubble. The mountains stand in new places. The sea remembers the waves it threw. And Zeus, though he has won, is not yet at rest. A throne is not only a seat, it is a responsibility. And responsibility can feel heavy even on divine shoulders. He looks at the sky that once belonged to Uranus, and he feels how easy it would be to become the same kind of ruler, gripping too hard, swallowing what he fears. So Zeus does what new rulers in myth often do. He organizes. He divides the realms with his brothers, as if drawing lines in the great map of existence. The sky will be his. The sea will be Poseidon's. The underworld will be Hades. The earth remains for all, because no one can own the ground under every foot. This division is not only practical, It is an attempt to avoid the old mistake, to keep one power from pressing too tightly over everything. For now, the world settles. The new gods stand in the fresh air of their victory, and the ancient prison of Tartarus holds the defeated titans like a deep, locked chest. Above, stars seem brighter again, as if the sky is glad to be open. And yet, quietly, another lesson waits, because power rarely sits still. After a war, there is always the question of what kind of peace will follow. Zeus builds his home on Olympus, high enough that clouds gather below it. Picture the mountain as a broad, calm height where the air is thin and clean. It is a place that says, "We are above the old darkness now." The gods settle into roles, and the roles begin to shape them. Hestia becomes the steady center, not loud, not violent, simply present, like the first flame in a hearth. Demeter turns her attention to growing things, to the slow miracle of seed and soil. Poseidon does not become calmer, but he becomes focused, as if the sea itself has accepted a new name. Hades takes his realm like a quiet duty, because someone must hold the invisible places. Hera stands beside Zeus, and a new court forms around them. Later stories will make their relationship stormy and complicated. But here, there is simply the sense that the hall has found its queen. Still, Zeus remembers what fear did to his father. He tells himself he will not be like Kronos. But myth is honest. In a strange way, it shows how a person can hate a pattern and still repeat it. A prophecy begins to circulate, carried by whispers, carried by memory. It says that Zeus, too, might one day be overthrown, and that the child of a certain partner will be the one to do it. This partner is Métis, the same wise one who helped him undo Kronos. Zeus listens when she speaks, because she sees around corners. But when he hears the prophecy, the old Titan fear stirs inside him, like a cold hand on the back of the neck. And so Zeus does something that feels both clever and wrong. He does not strike Métis. He does not throw her into Tartarus. Instead, he swallows her. The act is quiet in description, and that is what makes it unsettling. It is Kronos' habit, wearing a new face. Zeus tells himself it is different, because he is not destroying her, only containing her. But containment is still a kind of control. Later, Zeus is struck by a terrible headache, a pressure behind the eyes, as if a storm is trapped in his skull. He calls for help, and his head is opened. From that opening, Athena is born, already grown, already armored, already clear-eyed. She is not a child in need of rescue. She is a thought made visible. Athena's birth is a reminder. Even when you swallow something, even when you hide it, creation can still break through. The future is stubborn. It will not stay contained forever. In a bedtime story, you can let this feel less violent and more symbolic, an idea that has been held too tightly, finally finding air. After that, Olympus feels more alive. The new gods laugh, argue, build, and decorate their new world. They set laws. They invite allies. They make promises and break a few. They are powerful. but not perfect, and that imperfection is part of what makes the myths human, even when the characters are not. For now, though, the sky is steady. The Great War is over. The old king is locked away. The new king sits in a bright hall, listening to the wind on the mountain. And if your eyelids are heavy, you can let them be heavy. The story has moved from thunder and stone to quieter things, to choices, to whispers, to the slow shaping of an age. Let your breathing be slow. Let your thoughts drift like clouds. In myth, there is always another chapter. But you do not have to hold it all at once. You can rest here, in the calm after the storm, while Olympus shines above the sleeping earth. Outside, the night holds steady. The stars do not hurry, and the sea below Olympus keeps its slow rhythm. If a thought wanders in, let it wander out again, like a tide that returns to open water, leaving the shore quiet for you. After the war, Olympus is built like a calm answer to a loud question. It is not only a palace, it is a signal. It says that the sky now has a center, and that the new gods intend to stay. You can picture long halls of pale stone, floors that feel cool under bare feet, and open terraces where clouds drift below like slow sheep. The gods settle into routines, as if immortality also needs daily habits to feel real. Zeus sits on a high seat, but he learns quickly that a throne does not stop worry. Worry finds you wherever you sit. It comes from prophecy, from memory, from the simple fact that power attracts challengers, the way fire attracts night insects. Zeus listens to Themis and to Athena, and they speak about order, about oaths, about how a ruler should not rule by fear alone. Still, the old Titan shadow remains, because the universe has already shown him how a son can replace a father. Down in Tartarus, the defeated Titans are guarded, but not forgotten. A prison is not the same as an ending. Even buried anger can warm itself into movement. Gaia, who helped the Olympians win, also feels the heaviness of the new order. In some stories, she is not pleased that her Titan children are chained. She is the ground under everyone, and she carries both sides. When the earth is unhappy, it does not shout, it trembles. From Gaia and Tartarus, new beings rise. The giants, they are not like the Titans, who feel like ancient rulers. The giants feel like raw resistance, like stone that refuses to be shaped. Some are described with serpent legs. Some are simply huge, loud, and hungry for the sky. Their names vary in different tellings, but the mood is the same. They are the earth pushing back, saying, "You cannot rearrange everything without consequence." The giants challenge Olympus, and the Titanomachy begins. It is another war, but it has a different taste. The Titan War was about who should rule. The Giant War feels more like a test, as if the new gods must prove they deserve the order they claim. The sky darkens again. Mountains are thrown. Fires scatter across hillsides. The sea churns. If the Titan War was a storm season, this is a sudden, violent squall that arrives without warning. Zeus throws thunder. Athena fights at his side, steady and precise. Apollo and Artemis strike with arrows that seem to cut through fog. Dionysus, sometimes included in these later battles, carries a wild strength that is strangely joyful. Hermes moves fast, slipping between chaos like a clever thought. And Heracles, a mortal hero, is said to be necessary for the Olympians to win. This detail matters because it suggests something new. Mortals are no longer only spectators. The world is shifting toward a balance where human hands can change divine outcomes. Heracles arrives as a calm force inside the noise. He is strong, but he is also focused, as if he understands that this fight is bigger than personal glory. He shoots arrows into giants who cannot be killed by gods alone, and each arrow is like a bridge between mortal effort and divine order. The giants fall, one by one, and the earth quiets, though it does not become soft. When the giants are defeated, the gods breathe again. But the story does not let them rest for long, because if power has enemies, it also has echoes. And the next echo is Typhon, the storm thing, the last and greatest monster born from Gaia, sometimes with Tartarus as the father. Typhon is described as towering, with 100 serpent heads, with eyes that flash, with a voice that can sound like many animals at once. He is fear-given body. He is not only a challenger, he is a disaster. Typhon rises, and even the gods feel a chill. Some stories say they flee, taking animal shapes in panic, hiding in Egypt. Whether you take this literally or as a symbol, the point is gentle and strange. Even gods can be startled into running. They are powerful, but they are not unshakable. Zeus, however, does not run, or if he hesitates, he returns. A king cannot build order by always escaping disorder. The battle between Zeus and Typhon is like the sky fighting itself. Thunderbolts flash, winds scream, the sea foams, mountains crack. Zeus strikes Typhon again and again, and Typhon fights back with a strength that feels endless. At one point, Typhon is said to cut Zeus' tendons, stealing his ability to move. The image is terrifying, but in a calm telling, you can imagine it like this: the ruler of lightning, suddenly unable to stand, learning what helplessness feels like. Hermes and Pan help restore Zeus, according to some versions, recovering what was taken. Zeus rises again, and this time he fights with a colder focus. He does not throw thunder wildly. He aims. He forces Typhon back, and at last he traps him under a mountain, often said to be Etna. The monster is buried, but his breath becomes volcano fire when the ground shakes and smoke rises. Some Greeks imagined Typhon turning in his prison. With Typhon defeated, the universe finally feels settled, as if the last big wave has rolled away and the surface water can smooth. Olympus is secure. The sky has its ruler. The sea has its ruler. The underworld has its ruler. And the earth, though shared, is calmer than it was during the wars. Now the myths begin to look more toward the world of humans. This is where the stories slow down into daily things, seasons, marriages, punishments, gifts, and small rebellions. The gods are no longer only warriors. They become judges, lovers, tricksters, and guardians. They begin to interact with villages, fields, ships, and kitchens. The grand cosmic drama drifts into the ordinary, and the ordinary becomes sacred. Prometheus, the Titan who sided with humans, still watches. He is not chained in every timeline at this point, but his role is always near. He represents foresight, the ability to think ahead, and that gift often brings trouble. The Olympians want control. Prometheus wants progress. Humans want warmth, light, and a little safety in the dark. If you let your mind picture the world now, picture early people on a cold plain. They do not yet have iron tools. They do not yet have cities that glow at night. They have hands and stones and fragile shelters. They have fear of winter and fear of beasts. When night comes, it comes fully, and it is deep. The gods above might seem distant, but the sky is always overhead, and thunder can feel like a voice. In some tellings, Zeus is cautious about giving humans too much power. He remembers how power creates rivals. He remembers how a hidden child became his own downfall to Kronos. So he keeps certain gifts away. Prometheus disagrees. He sees humans as small but capable, like sparks that could become flames if given a chance. And so, the old Titan steals fire, or he tricks the gods at a sacrifice, dividing meat and bones in a way that embarrasses Zeus. These details vary, but the mood stays consistent. It is a conflict that is not about thrones, but about fairness. Who gets warmth? Who gets knowledge? Who gets to rise above mere survival? Zeus responds as kings in myth often respond. He punishes. He chooses a punishment that will echo. Prometheus is chained, and an eagle comes each day. The image is harsh, but you can watch it from far away, as if it belongs to a storm you see beyond a hill. The story is saying that rebellion has a cost, and that rulers often make examples. But the story also says something else. Prometheus endures. The eagle returns. The day returns. The night returns. And still the Titan holds his refusal, as if stubbornness can be a kind of gift. Humans, meanwhile, keep the fire. They gather around it. They cook food. They keep wolves back. They tell stories. The stolen flame becomes the center of human life, and it does not go out, even when a god is angry. Zeus has another answer ready. If humans have fire, he will send them another complication. He will send Pandora, the first woman in some tellings, crafted by the gods with many gifts. The story is not kind to her in the way later readers might wish, but we can tell it gently. Pandora is curiosity given form. She carries a jar, sometimes called a box, filled with troubles. When she opens it, troubles scatter into the world's sickness, labor, grief, and all the small pains that follow people like shadows. Yet inside the jar, one thing remains. Hope stays behind, trembling but present. This ending is quiet and strange. Even when hardship is released, hope remains as a final ember. It does not erase pain, but it helps people walk through it. It is not a loud triumph. It is a steady thing, like a candle that keeps burning when the wind is low. This is how the myth turns from cosmic war to human life. The gods are in place. The monsters are buried. The sky is ordered. And now, the real work begins. The work of living under that sky. Even in chains, Prometheus is said to know a secret that matters to Zeus. It is not a secret about fire. It is a secret about family, which is always the sharpest subject in Greek myth. Prometheus knows of a woman, Thetis, a sea nymph, who is fated to bear a son stronger than his father. Zeus desires her, and so does Poseidon. But the prophecy turns desire into caution. Because a son stronger than his father is the pattern that breaks rulers. It is the same pattern that toppled Uranus and then Kronos. Zeus remembers, and he does not want to become the next story of defeat. So Zeus needs Prometheus's knowledge, even while punishing him. This is another quiet theme. The ruler tries to crush the rebel, but still needs the rebel's foresight. After a long time, and after many days of eagle wings and slow healing, Zeus makes a bargain. Prometheus reveals the warning, and Zeus avoids the danger by arranging that Thetis marry a mortal, Peleus. Their child will be Achilles, strong enough to shake the world of heroes, but not strong enough to threaten Olympus. In some tellings, this bargain is also when Prometheus is freed, or at least when his suffering begins to loosen. Later, Heracles, on one of his labors, comes to the Caucasus, sees the chained Titan, and kills the eagle with an arrow. He breaks the chains, not only with strength, but with a sense of justice. The moment is brief, but it matters. It suggests that even divine punishments can be undone. It suggests that endurance and time can soften what seems permanent. With fire and hope and suffering now woven into human life, myths begin to explain why the world feels the way it does. They talk about the ages of humanity. First comes a golden age, when people live easily, without harsh labor, and the earth offers food as if it enjoys being generous. People do not fear old age. They do not fear war. They die like falling asleep. It is a dream of a simple world, like a childhood memory that may never have been real, but still comforts the mind. Then comes the Silver Age, when people live longer as children and struggle as adults. They forget to honor the gods. They argue. They are proud in careless ways. Zeus ends this age, and the story moves on. The Bronze Age follows. Harder, louder, filled with weapons and conflict. Humans become strong in the wrong direction, turning skill into harm. They are made, in some stories, from ash trees, as if violence grows from wood and iron. Finally comes the Heroic Age, the age of famous names, of ships and walls and quests. It is a slightly kinder age than Bronze, because it includes heroes who try to be noble, even when they fail. It leads toward the stories of Thebes and Troy. And after that comes the Iron Age, the age of ordinary people, full of work and disappointment and small joys. This is the age the storytellers live in. It is our age, in a sense. The myth is saying, the world is not golden now, but you can still find moments of gold. When you hear that, You can feel the myths stepping closer to the human heart. They are not only about monsters and thunder. They are about longing for a gentler past and trying to understand why life is heavy. A person listens by a fire and thinks, maybe there was once a time when the earth gave more easily. Maybe the gods were closer. Maybe things were simpler. The story holds that longing the way a bowl holds water. Zeus, watching the Iron Age, becomes dissatisfied. He sees humans lying, breaking oaths, hurting each other, and he decides the world needs to be washed clean. This is not a quiet decision, but the telling can still be calm. Imagine rain that does not stop. Imagine rivers that swell. Imagine the sea pushing inland like a slow animal. The flood comes, and the old shapes of the land are blurred. One man, Deucalion, is warned. He is the son of Prometheus in some versions, which makes the story feel like a continuation. The rebel Titan's line carries foresight into a time of disaster. Deucalion builds a chest, not a grand ship, but a simple, floating shelter, like a seed pod. His wife, Pyrrha, climbs in with him. They drift over a world turned to water, and the silence is huge. After many days, the waters recede, and the chest lands on a mountain, often Parnassus. The couple step out into a clean, empty world. There are no cities, no voices, only wet stone and wind. They ask the gods what to do. An oracle tells them to throw the bones of their mother behind them. They are confused. Then they understand. Their mother is Gaia, the earth. Her bones are stones. So they throw stones over their shoulders, and the stones become people. The stones Deucalion throws become men. The stones Pyrrha throws become women. It is a strange image, but also tender. It says that humanity is born again from the earth itself, solid and stubborn, capable of enduring. It says that after ruin, the ground can still give life. This flood story sits quietly beside the fire story. One says humans gain warmth and skill. The other says humans lose everything and start again. Together they create a feeling the world is fragile. But it continues. It falls, but it returns. It suffers, but it rebuilds. Now, with a renewed humanity walking on damp soil, the gods begin to involve themselves more directly in the details of life. They take lovers. They punish arrogance. They reward hospitality. They test the boundaries between mortal and divine. And the myths begin to multiply, branching into many smaller tales, like streams that spread across a valley. If you drift toward sleep, let the names soften and float away slow. And somewhere in the background, the Titans remain, like old stones under grass. They are defeated, but not erased. The past is never fully erased. It becomes foundation. It becomes cautionary tale. It becomes the reason the new rulers look over their shoulders when thunder is quiet. Let the war sounds fade. Let the world become a little smaller, like a hut with a fire inside. Outside, the night is wide. Inside, the flame is calm, and the story, for now, rests beside you. The world after the flood feels fresh, but also lonely, like a room after the guests have left. Deucalion and Pyrrha walk among wet stones and new grass, and in the distance the mountains hold their silence. The gods, watching from above, do not come down to rebuild houses by hand. Instead, they send stories, and the stories become instructions. They tell humans what to fear, what to honor, and what not to touch. Zeus, now firmly king, begins to behave like a king who believes he can take what he wants. This is one of the sharp edges of Greek myth. The sky god brings storms, but he also brings desire, and desire makes him careless. Hera, his wife, becomes the guardian of marriage, but her marriage is filled with betrayal, and so her role becomes complicated. She can be majestic and protective, and she can also be furious and cruel. The myths do not smooth her. They let her be a storm cloud that sometimes waters the fields and sometimes breaks branches. Many mortal women become part of Zeus's wandering. The stories often begin with a quiet life, then a sudden divine interruption. Io is a young woman connected to Hera's temple in some versions, and Zeus notices her. Hera notices, too, because Hera notices everything that threatens her dignity. Zeus turns Io into a cow to hide her, but hiding is never clean in these stories. Hera demands the cow as a gift, and she sets Argus to watch, a giant with many eyes who almost never sleeps. Hermes, clever and light, is sent to solve the problem. He plays music, tells stories, and slowly Argus's eyes close, one by one, like lamps being extinguished. Hermes kills Argus, and Hera places Argus's eyes onto the tail of the peacock, which is why, in myth, the bird carries little circles of watching. Io, meanwhile, is chased by a stinging fly, driven across lands. Terrified and exhausted, she runs until she reaches Egypt, where she becomes human again. Her suffering turns into geography. Rivers, seas, and places gain meaning through her footsteps. Another story follows Europa, a princess by the sea. Zeus comes as a white bull, gentle and beautiful. Europa strokes him, feels safe, climbs onto his back, and the bull walks into the water. The shore recedes. The palace becomes a thin line. The sea opens. Europa realizes she is being taken, but it is too late to jump. Zeus carries her to Crete, and there, her story becomes the root of kings and legends. The continent itself will later carry her name, as if the world remembers the moment she was lifted away. There is also Leda, visited by Zeus in the form of a swan, and from that strange union come children who will matter Helen, whose face will later launch ships, and others who will pull threads through many myths. There is Danae, enclosed by her father, yet reached by Zeus as golden rain. And from her comes Perseus. In these stories, the gods are like weather. They slip through cracks. They arrive when doors are locked. They change family trees without asking permission. If you feel uneasy with these tales, that is normal. Even ancient listeners might have felt it. Though they lived in a different world, we can tell them softly, not as approval, but as observation. The myths show power behaving badly, and the world around that power reacting. sometimes with punishment, sometimes with endurance. While Zeus moves through love and deception, another god shapes the human calendar. Demeter, goddess of grain, loves her daughter Persephone. Their bond is simple and bright, like sunlight on a field. Persephone walks in meadows, picking flowers. The earth gives color. The air smells like leaves and sweet herbs. Then the ground opens. Hades rises from below in a chariot, dark and quiet. He takes Persephone down into the underworld. In some versions, Zeus has agreed to this marriage. In others, he is complicit through silence. Demeter does not accept it. She searches everywhere, holding torches at night, asking rivers and trees. She refuses to eat, refuses to smile. And as Demeter suffers, the fields suffer. Seeds do not sprout. Grain does not rise. Hunger spreads, not because humans have sinned, but because a goddess is grieving. This myth explains the seasons, but it also explains something else. It says that the world is connected to emotion. When the mother is in sorrow, the earth becomes barren. When the daughter returns, the earth becomes generous again. Zeus cannot ignore this forever, because even gods need humans to give sacrifices, and humans cannot give sacrifices if they are starving. A compromise is made. Persephone will return for part of the year, and for part of the year, she will remain with Hades. The detail that binds her is a few pomegranate seeds, eaten in the underworld. Food becomes contract. The underworld is not only a place, it is a rule. If you eat there, you belong there, at least a little. So Persephone rises each spring, and Demeter's joy turns the soil soft. Flowers return, wheat grows. Then Persephone descends again, and Demeter's grief cools the air. Leaves fall. Fields rest. The myth is a lullaby about loss and return. It does not pretend that loss disappears. It says, loss comes and goes in cycles, and we learn to live inside the circle. In this calmer era, the gods begin to set boundaries. They punish pride. They reward kindness. They teach rules through stories, because a rule spoken plainly is easy to forget, but a rule wrapped in a tale clings to the mind. There is Lycaon, a king who tests Zeus by serving him human flesh. Zeus is outraged and turns Lycaon into a wolf. The story warns against cruelty, against breaking hospitality, against treating strangers as objects. There is Niobe, proud of her many children, mocking Leto, who has only Apollo and Artemis. Apollo and Artemis kill Niobe's children, and Niobe turns to stone, still weeping. The story warns against mocking those you think are weaker, because the gods are sensitive to honor. There is also Arachne, a mortal woman who weaves so well she challenges Athena. Arachne's tapestry is perfect, but it shows the gods' humiliations and tricks, which is not what Athena wants reflected back. Athena destroys the work and turns Arachne into a spider, forever weaving. The story is sad, and it is also about art. It says talent is powerful, but it can threaten those who claim authority. And then there is the gentle story of hospitality, of Baucis and Philemon, an old couple who welcome strangers when a whole village refuses. The strangers are gods in disguise. The couple share their simple food, and the gods reward them. Their hut becomes a temple. They are allowed to die together and become intertwined trees. This story is like a warm cup of water in the middle of harsher myths. It says the gods can be kind, and that kindness is noticed. As these smaller tales spread, the great old Titan war begins to feel far away, like thunder from last month. But the Titans are still present in the background of the gods' lives. The Titan Oceanus is still a river of the world. The Titan Helios still drives the sun in some traditions. The Titan Selene still carries the moon. The New Order did not erase every Titan. It absorbed some, renamed some, and pushed others into shadow. Myth is like that. It keeps old layers under new paint. Sometimes, a Titan becomes a quiet ally. Sometimes, a Titan becomes a warning. Kronos, even imprisoned, remains the symbol of what happens when time eats its own children. Prometheus remains the symbol of foresight and sacrifice. Atlas remains the image of endurance, holding up the sky, a living pillar. When you hear these names, you can feel how the world is built, from stories stacked upon stories, like stones in an ancient wall. Now the stage is ready for heroes, because heroes are the bridge between gods and humans. They are mortal enough to suffer, but touched enough by divinity to do things that feel impossible. Some heroes are born from Zeus. Some are guided by Athena. Some are hated by Hera. Their lives are long struggles set inside the larger piece of Olympus. But before the heroes rise fully, it helps to see the world the gods have made. It is a world where the sea can swallow ships, where the sun can scorch, where winter can starve, where love can break households, where pride can freeze a heart into stone. The myths do not promise safety. They promise meaning. They say, if you listen, you can learn why the world behaves the way it does. If you are lying in the dark now, imagine the earth breathing slowly. Imagine a field under stars. Somewhere far away, an owl calls. Somewhere closer, a fire pops quietly. Above, the constellations hold their shapes, and the gods, if they exist, are not rushing. They are watching, arguing, laughing, regretting, and then watching again. And under all of it, deeper than the underworld, deeper than the sea, there is still the old Titan foundation, the first generation, the raw elements of the universe. Even when the stories turn to human drama, they stand on that ancient ground. And that is why, even in a tale about a flower and a mother's grief, you can feel the echo of the first sky and the first earth, still holding everything up. Let the echo fade gently. Let the names become soft sounds. The story can keep moving, but you do not have to chase it. You can simply float alongside it, like a leaf on a slow river. Perseus is one of the first heroes whose story feels like a complete journey. His mother Danae is kept in a locked room by her father, because a prophecy says her son will kill him. The old fear returns again. The fear that children fulfill the things adults try to avoid. Zeus reaches Danae anyway, not as a man, but as a strange shower of gold. A child is born, and the grandfather panics. He places Danae and the baby in a wooden chest and throws them into the sea. The chest floats, like Deucalion's, like a small boat of fate. It washes up on an island, and Danae is saved by kind fishermen. Perseus grows, and the king of the island, Polydectes, begins to desire Danae. Perseus stands in the way. Polydectes decides to remove him with a task that sounds impossible. He demands the head of Medusa, one of the Gorgons, whose gaze turns living things to stone. Perseus goes, not only with courage, but with divine help. Hermes gives him a sword or a sickle. Athena gives him a shield, polished like a mirror. He receives winged sandals, a cap that can hide him, and a bag to carry what should not be carried. These are not just tools. They are symbols. They suggest that a hero is a human being wearing pieces of the gods. Borrowing power for a moment, Medusa is not always a simple monster. In some tellings, she was once a woman, punished after being harmed in Athena's temple. In others, she is simply born monstrous. However you hold it, the scene is quiet in its own way. Perseus does not look directly at her. He looks at her reflection in the shield, and he moves like someone trying not to wake a sleeping danger. He cuts off her head, and from the wound spring Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, as if even death can release strange new life. Perseus flies away with the head hidden in the bag. The Gorgon sisters chase him, but he is already leaving the island of horror, carrying a curse like a heavy secret. On his way home, he sees a girl chained to a rock by the sea. Her name is Andromeda. A sea monster is coming, and the people have offered her as payment to calm the waves. Perseus fights the monster, saves her, and in some versions uses Medusa's head as a final weapon. The monster becomes stone, and the sea grows still. When Perseus returns, he uses the Gorgon's head against Polydectes, turning the cruel king into stone. Athena later places Medusa's head on her own shield, the Aegis, not as a trophy of pride, but as a warning. Some things are too powerful to forget, so they are carried openly, in controlled form, on the armor of a goddess of wisdom. Perseus's story also brings the prophecy full circle. In a later moment, at a public game, Perseus throws a discus, and it accidentally strikes his grandfather, fulfilling the prediction. It is not murder from hatred. It is fate arriving through ordinary motion. Through a simple throw in a friendly crowd, the myth is saying, you cannot outrun the future by locking someone away. You only change the path it takes to reach you. While Perseus begins the line of heroes, another story begins to shape the feeling of the world, the story of Dionysus. Dionysus is born in an unusual way, carried in Zeus's thigh after his mortal mother Semele is destroyed by the sight of Zeus's true power. Dionysus grows up among nymphs, among vines and wild hills. He brings wine, but also a kind of holy madness, a loosening of the mind. He shows that the gods are not only order and law, they are also ecstasy, forgetting, and the relief of stepping outside the self for a while. Dionysus wanders, and people do not always welcome him. Kings try to resist his cult. They try to keep their cities controlled and tidy. But Dionysus slips in through song and drums and the scent of grapes. In one famous tale, a king named Pentheus spies on Dionysus's followers and is torn apart by his own mother in a frenzy. It is a brutal image, but the lesson is quieter. You cannot control everything. And when you deny the human need for release, the need returns in darker ways. Across these stories, the gods seem to be testing the world like a hand testing water temperature. They watch how mortals behave. They step in. They step back. They reward. They punish. And in the distance, the old Titan age stays like a memory of raw power before rules, reminding everyone what chaos looks like when it wins. For sleep, you can hold these tales as drifting pictures rather than sharp events. A chest on the sea, a mirrored shield in a cave, a girl on a rock with waves below, a vine curling over a doorway, a field turning green as a daughter returns to her mother. These are images that move slowly, and if you let them, they can become gentle, like a series of dreams that do not need to be solved. Soon, the story will move toward the greatest hero of Zeus's children, Heracles, whose life is a long chain of trials, and after him, the tales of cities and wars will rise, leading toward Thebes and toward Troy. But tonight, it is enough to feel the world settling into its pattern, with gods above, mortals below, and the old titans beneath it all, holding the deepest layer of the mythic earth. If you want one more soft thread before drifting off, think of Apollo chasing Daphne through a forest. She does not want him, and she asks the river to help. Her body becomes a laurel tree, leaves shimmering in moonlight. Apollo crowns himself with those leaves, and desire turns into a quiet symbol, a reminder to stop, to listen, to let go. Wind moves through the branches. Slow. Part 5 equals Heracles grows up under a sky that already knows his name. He is the son of Zeus and a mortal woman, Alcmene, and that alone makes his life feel like a rope pulled tight between two worlds. Hera, still carrying the old anger of betrayal, does not forgive him. She cannot strike Zeus directly, so she turns her gaze toward the child, who reminds her of what she hates. When Heracles is still in the cradle, 2 snakes are sent to kill him. The room is dim, the air warm, and the baby is half asleep, but his hands close around the serpents as if he is grabbing toys. He squeezes, and the snakes go still. The adults rush in and see the impossible, and the story begins to shape him into something more than human. As he grows, he becomes strong in a way that frightens even the strong. Yet strength without peace is heavy. In one fateful moment, Hera sends a madness over him. When the madness lifts, Heracles sees what he has done to those he loved, and he cannot live with it. He goes to an oracle for purification, and the answer is not gentle. He must serve King Eurystheus and perform labors, tasks designed to break him, to grind his guilt into something useful. The first labor sends him to the Nemean lion, a beast whose hide cannot be pierced by ordinary weapons. Heracles follows tracks through dry grass and quiet rocks until he finds the lion's cave. He tries arrows. He tries a sword. But the hide turns them away as if the lion is wearing the night itself. So he does the simplest thing. He wrestles. He closes his arms around the animal and holds until its breath stops. Then he skins it with its own claw and wears the pelt as armor. A moving reminder that some protections must be earned with closeness to danger. The second labor is the Hydra of Lerna, a water serpent with many heads. Each time Heracles cuts one, two more grow. Like panic multiplying when you try to silence it. He is not alone this time. His nephew Iolaus brings fire. Together they cauterize the necks as the heads fall, and the Hydra's growth finally ends. Heracles dips his arrows in the Hydra's poison, and even victory becomes a future threat, because poison always waits for a chance. Next comes the Ceryneian hind, sacred to Artemis, swift and shining. Heracles does not want to harm what is holy. He chases it for a year, not in rage, but in persistence, until he can catch it without killing. The labor teaches patience, the ability to pursue without destroying. Then the Erymanthian boar, loud and wild, is driven into snow where it tires, and Heracles binds it, carrying it back like a storm caught in ropes. Some labors feel less like combat and more like cleansing. The Augean stables are filled with filth from countless cattle, and Eurystheus thinks this task will humiliate the hero. Heracles does not scrub. He redirects rivers. Water rushes through and washes everything clean in a single day. It is a lesson that brute effort is not the only strength. Sometimes strength is seeing the right channel. There are birds at Stymphalus with bronze feathers, sharp as knives. Heracles uses a rattle, a gift in some tellings, to startle them into the air and shoot them. There is the Cretan bull, once sent by Poseidon, now raging through fields. Heracles wrestles it down and leads it away. There are the mares of Diomedes, fed on human flesh, and Heracles turns the cruelty back on their master, and the animals become tame, as if even hunger can be retrained. The labors stretch across the map like a long walk through nightmares. At each stop, Heracles leaves behind a monster, a cleared path, a village that can sleep a little easier. But the most haunting labor comes when he must descend to the underworld and bring back Cerberus, the hound that guards the dead. He goes down through a cave mouth where the air turns cold and sound feels swallowed. In the underworld he meets shades who speak softly, and he sees the river that divides life from death. He also meets old figures from the Titan Age, because the underworld keeps everything. Some versions say he sees Theseus trapped, or speaks to Meleager, or hears warnings that taste like dust. To take Cerberus, Heracles is told he must use no weapon. He approaches the three-headed hound, feeling its breath, hearing the low growl that seems to come from more than one throat. He wraps his arms around the beast and holds on through snapping jaws and twisting serpent tail. Slowly, the monster yields. He drags Cerberus up into daylight, and the sunlight shocks the creature, as if it has never learned the color of morning. Among the labors, one reaches back directly into the Titan world. Heracles is sent to fetch the golden apples of the Hesperides, guarded by a dragon and kept in a far garden at the edge of the world. To find them, he must seek Atlas, the Titan who holds the sky. Atlas stands like a living mountain, arms raised, shoulders groaning under the blue weight. Heracles offers a trade. He will hold the sky while Atlas goes for the apples. For a moment, the hero becomes the Titan. The sky presses down, and Heracles feels what endurance really is. It is not a single burst of strength. It is the ability to keep bearing something that does not get lighter. Atlas returns with the apples, and he tries to leave Heracles under the sky forever. But Heracles uses wit. He asks Atlas to take the sky back for a second so he can adjust his cloak. Atlas agrees, and the hero steps away, leaving the Titan with his eternal load. The myth is not mocking Atlas. It is showing the difference between a task and a fate. Later, Heracles frees Prometheus, shooting the eagle and breaking the chain. It is a small kindness in the middle of violence, a reminder that heroes can also mend. Prometheus, grateful, gives advice, and the advice is always about foresight, because that is what Titans still offer: the long view. By the end of the labors, Heracles has done what Eurystheus hoped he could not. Yet the reward is not simple happiness. It is a reputation that follows him like a loud drum, and a life that continues to be tested. In some tales, he will die painfully, then be taken into Olympus, becoming a god. In that ending, even the anger of Hera cools, and she accepts him, because immortality changes what a quarrel means. If you listen closely, you can hear the Titan age inside Heracles' story. Atlas, Prometheus, the edge of the world garden, the underworld rivers, all of it is the old foundation showing through. The Olympians rule, but the Titans remain in the structure of the myths, like deep roots under a tree. And when the fires burn low and the monsters are quiet, the world feels safe enough for other heroes to rise, carrying their own burdens under the same steady stars. After the labors are counted and accepted, Heracles does not suddenly become calm. Myths rarely allow a hero to retire. He travels, and wherever he goes, the world seems to test him. He fights bandits on lonely roads. He breaks the power of cruel kings. He clears wild places where people are afraid to farm. Sometimes he is generous. Sometimes he is too quick. And the same hands that lift a child onto a shoulder can also break a door from its hinges. One story places him in the service of a queen named Omphale. The strongest man in Greece must wear soft clothes and do women's work, while the queen wears the lion skin and carries his club. People tell this tale with laughter, but under the laughter is another lesson. Even a hero can be humbled, and humbling does not always mean destroying. It can mean learning to live without the constant need to prove. Another story brings him to a river where the centaur Nessus offers to carry travelers across. Nessus carries Heracles' wife, Deianira, and halfway over he tries to steal her. Heracles hears her cry and shoots Nessus with a hydra-poisoned arrow. The centaur falls into the shallows, but with his last breath, he whispers a lie to Deianira, telling her that his blood will work as a love charm if her husband ever strays. Years later, jealousy and fear make Deianira remember that whisper. Heracles is coming home after another campaign, and rumor says he is bringing a new woman with him. Deianira cannot bear the thought. She takes a robe and smears it with the centaur's blood, believing she is protecting her marriage. She sends it as a gift. When Heracles puts the robe on, the poison wakes. It burns into his skin like invisible fire. He tries to tear the cloth away, but it clings, and when he pulls, skin comes with it. This is the strange cruelty of the Hydra's venom. It waits patiently. Then it does not stop. Heracles roars, not at a monster, but at his own fate, and the echo feels like the old thunder of the Titan war, distant yet familiar. In Agani, he builds a funeral pyre on Mount Oeta. He knows he cannot outwrestle this pain. He asks for someone to light the fire, but no one wants to be the hand that ends him. At last, a young man, often named Philoctetes, agrees. Heracles gives him his bow and poisoned arrows, a gift that will matter later in another war. The pyre is lit, flames rise, and smoke curls into the sky like a dark ribbon. Then, in the mythic telling, something else happens. Zeus sends a thunderbolt. Clouds open. Heracles' mortal part is burned away, and his immortal part is carried upward. The hero becomes a god. On Olympus, old grudges soften. Hera, who once hunted him, receives him at the gates, because eternity makes anger feel small. She even gives him her daughter Hebe as a bride, and in that marriage, the story tries to stitch its own wound closed. It is not that the past is erased. It is that the past is placed gently on a shelf where it can finally rest. Below, the world continues. People still walk roads where lions once hunted and where hydras once hissed. They speak Heracles' name when they need courage. They also speak his name when they need to remember that strength is not a cure for sorrow. It is only a tool, and tools can build or break. If we step back and listen to the older layer, the Titan layer, we can hear it humming under these later tales. The monsters Heracles fights often feel like leftover chaos, like old cracks in the world that the Olympian order did not fully seal. Each labor is a small reenactment of that first great struggle chaos pressed down, order pulling it back into shape. And when Heracles finally rises to Olympus, the pattern repeats again. A half-mortal becomes fully divine. Like a story walking upward, like smoke turning into cloud. The world grows quieter after him, just quiet enough for a different kind of hero, one with a different kind of cleverness, to step into the light. Some storytellers place Heracles at the edge of another ancient conflict, the war with the giants. After the Titans are chained and the Olympians settle into power, Gaia is still restless. She is the earth itself, and she does not like being told that the age of her older children is over. So she brings forth the giants, huge and wild, born from the same deep places as the Titans, a last surge of resistance against the sky gods. The giants are strange enemies. In many versions, they cannot be killed by gods alone. A mortal must strike the final blow. That is why Heracles matters, even after his labors. Zeus and Athena and Apollo fight with their familiar brilliance. But Heracles is the hinge between worlds, the hand that can finish what a god begins. In the battle, the air is filled with flying stones and cracked thunder. Some giants try to pile mountains on top of Olympus, as if they can bury the gods under the earth. Athena throws islands. Poseidon breaks a piece of land loose and hurls it like a weapon. Artemis shoots from a distance, so far it feels like starlight, and Heracles stands among them. Arrow after arrow, his breath steady, his lion's skin dark against the glare. There is a giant named Alcyoneus who seems to rise again each time he falls, because as long as he touches his native ground, he cannot die. Heracles drags him away from his homeland, pulling him across the dirt until the magic fails. And then the arrow finds its mark. In that detail, you can feel the old Titan logic. Place matters. Roots matter. The earth gives and takes. When the giants are defeated, the world becomes a little more settled. It is as if the gods are hammering the last nails into the roof of the house they took from the Titans. The house still creaks, but it holds. Heracles does not stay in one city, and his footprints wander into other legends. In some tellings, he sails with the Argonauts for a short time, when Jason gathers heroes to seek the Golden Fleece. The ship Argo is new and bright, built with help from Athena, and it cuts the sea like a clean thought. Heracles rows with a steady rhythm that makes the oars sound like a slow drum. On the journey, Heracles loses his friend Hylas to water nymphs, and grief pulls him off the expedition. The Argonauts sail on without him, and the story turns in another direction. But that brief overlap ties the myths together, like knots on the same rope. One hero touches another hero's path, and then the paths separate again. By now, the old Titan generation is far below the surface. Yet it keeps surfacing in small ways. The sea still belongs to ancient gods older than Zeus. The sun still rides in the chariot of Helios, a Titan who was never chained. The winds still have names and tempers. And in the far distance, Atlas still holds the sky, unmoving, patient as stone. Greek myths often feel like a long night walk where you keep passing the same landmarks from different angles. A river, a mountain, a sacred grove, a cave mouth that exhales cold air. Each time you pass, the story is different, but the place remembers. Now, as the world settles into this newer age, the stage shifts towards cities, toward laws and ships and clever plans. Strength remains, but it is joined by strategy, and heroes begin to win, not only with arms, but with minds. In Athens, a boy named Theseus grows under the shadow of questions. His mother tells him his father is a king, but she does not name him. Under a heavy stone, she hides a sword and sandals, saying that if the boy is strong enough to lift the stone one day, he will be strong enough to seek his fate. Theseus lifts it when he comes of age, and he sets out along the road to the city, choosing the dangerous land route instead of the safer sea. On that road he meets criminals who treat travelers like prey, and he defeats them with their own tricks, as if the world is teaching him early that justice can be a mirror. Far away, on Crete, another shadow waits in a labyrinth, the Minotaur, born from a curse and fed by tribute. The threads of these stories are already stretching toward each other, quietly, like lines being drawn across a map in the dark. The night holds its breath, then lets it go, slow and easy. Again, tonight. Part 6 equals. Theseus walks the road to Athens, with dust on his sandals and bright intent in his eyes. The sea route would have been easier, but Theseus wants to meet danger directly, as if he is testing the world and himself at the same time. On the way, he meets men who build their lives on cruelty. One bends travelers to fit an iron bed. Another kicks strangers into the sea from a cliff. Theseus defeats them by turning their own methods back on them, and the road slowly becomes safer behind him. When he reaches Athens, he finds a city ruled by King Aegeus. Tired and cautious, Theseus reveals the sword and sandals. And the king recognizes the signs he left long ago. Father and son meet like two pieces of a broken pot fitting together. Yet the reunion is not calm for long, because Athens carries a shameful bargain with Crete. Every so often, Athens must send young people across the sea as tribute. They are fed to the Minotaur, the bull-headed monster kept in a labyrinth on Crete. The Minotaur is the child of a curse and a secret desire, born when King Minos refuses to honor Poseidon. A white bull is meant to be sacrificed, but Minos keeps it, and the god answers by twisting the queen's heart. The result is a creature that should not exist, and because it should not exist, it must be hidden. Theseus volunteers to go with the tribute. Some say he wants to end the shame. Some say he wants glory. Often the myths allow both. The ship sails, and the sea looks calm, as if it does not care about the fear in the hold. When they arrive, the palace of Minos rises above them. Bright stone and sharp authority, Ariadne, daughter of Minos, sees Theseus and feels something quick and dangerous, like a spark in dry grass. She decides to help him. In some tellings, Aphrodite nudges her. In others, she chooses freely, and the myth becomes a quiet argument about fate and choice. Ariadne gives Theseus a ball of thread. The labyrinth is designed by Daedalus, a mind so skilled it can trap even a king's fear into architecture. Corridors turn back on themselves. Doorways lead to dead ends. The air inside smells of stone and old breath. Theseus ties the thread at the entrance and walks in, letting it unwind behind him. A thin line of order in a place built for confusion. In the dark he hears hooves, then a low snort, then the scrape of horns on stone. The Minotaur is not only monster, it is hunger, it is loneliness, it is everything pushed out of sight. Theseus fights it with sword and strength, and at last the creature falls. The victory is loud for a moment, then very quiet. Theseus follows the thread back. The thread does not boast. It only leads. Ariadne waits at the edge of the maze, and together they flee the island with the rescued youths. Yet the myth is never content with a clean ending. On the way home, Theseus leaves Ariadne behind on Naxos. Sometimes he abandons her. Sometimes a god takes her, turning her into the bride of Dionysus. Either way, the story tastes bittersweet, like a song that is beautiful because it hurts. Returning to Athens, Theseus forgets to change the ship's black sails to white. King Aegeus sees the dark sails and thinks his son is dead. In grief, he throws himself into the sea, and the sea takes his name. Theseus becomes king under a shadow that he accidentally created. His triumph is braided with loss, while Theseus is shaping Athens. Another set of stories gathers in the harbors. Stories made of wood and rope and daring. Jason, a young man with one sandal, arrives in Iolcus to claim a throne that was taken from him. King Peleus, uneasy, sends him on an impossible mission. Instead, Bring back the golden fleece from the far land of Colchis. Jason does not go alone. He gathers heroes like a storm gathering clouds. There is Orpheus, whose music can soften stone. There is Castor and Polydeuces, the Dioscuri, bright and quick. There is Atalanta in some versions, swift as the wind. There is Peleus, who will later father Achilles. There is old Argus, who builds the ship, and Athena helps by placing in its prow a beam of sacred oak that can speak. The ship is called Argo, and when it first slides into the sea, the water seems to accept it, as if the sea itself is curious. The Argonauts row in rhythm, and the oars make a sound like breathing. They pass islands and strange coasts, and each stop is a small myth nested inside the bigger one. They come to Lemnos, where the women have killed the men and live alone. The island is quiet in a way that feels wrong, like a house after an argument. They come to the land of the Dolions, where a misunderstanding leads to a night battle and sorrow. They come to a place where Phineus, a blind seer, is tormented by harpies that steal his food. The Argonauts chase the harpies away, and in gratitude, Phineus tells them how to survive the Symplegades. The clashing rocks. The Symplegades slam together with the sea between them, crushing ships like toys. Phineus advises them to send a dove first. The dove slips through, losing only a few feathers. Jason orders the rowers to pull with everything they have. The Argo darts forward. The rocks crash behind the stern, snapping off a piece of the ship's ornament. But they are through. After that, the rocks stand still, as if the world respects anyone who has proven their timing. At last they reach Colchis, where King Aeetes watches them with bright suspicion. Aeetes is tied to the sun god Helios, and Helios is a titan who still drives his chariot across the sky each day, untouched by Zeus's imprisonment of the other titans. In Colchis, the sunlight feels sharper, as if it carries an older authority. Aeetes sets tasks for Jason that should kill him. He must yoke fire-breathing bulls with hooves of bronze. He must plow a field with them and sow dragon's teeth, which will sprout into armed warriors. It is a test of impossible labor, like an echo of Heracles, but with no guarantee of divine favor. Medea, daughter of Aeetes, sees Jason, and the story shifts again. She is a witch, a healer, a woman with knowledge that tastes like night herbs and bitter roots. Some say Hera and Athena make her fall in love. Some say Eros shoots his arrow. But Medea's choices are never simple, and the myth keeps arguing about whether love is a spell or a decision. Medea gives Jason an ointment that will protect him from fire. She tells him how to yoke the bulls, how to throw a stone among the tooth-born warriors so they turn on each other, how to take the fleece while the dragon sleeps. Jason survives because he listens, because he accepts help, because he understands that a quest is not won by pride alone. They take the fleece, a golden hide that glows like trapped sunrise. It once belonged to a ram sent by the gods, a ram that carried children over the sea. Now it hangs in a sacred grove, guarded by a serpent that never closes its eyes. Medea sings it to sleep, and the serpent's coils loosen like a knot finally released. Escape is not gentle. Aeetes pursues them with ships. In some versions, Medea brings her brother along and then uses him in a horrifying way to slow the chase, scattering pieces into the sea so her father must stop to gather them. These moments remind you that myths are not bedtime stories in the modern sense. They are old mirrors. They show love, and they show what love can excuse. The Argo returns by strange routes. They face storms. They face the anger of gods. They pass near the edge of the world, where the air feels thin and the sea looks like polished stone. In some tellings, they must be cleansed by Circe, because they carry blood on their hands. In others, they are guided by divine signs, small lights on the water at night. Back in Greece, Jason does not receive the throne as simply as he imagined. Peleus still holds power, and Medea, fierce and clever, takes revenge. The story becomes dark again, then darker, because Medea's later choices are like a door closing in a storm. Jason's heroic quest ends not with peace, but with consequences that keep rippling. Even so, the Golden Fleece story stays in people's minds as a symbol of reach, of sailing beyond the familiar, and underneath it, the Titan layer still glows. Helios, above, the ancient dragon in the grove, the far edge of the map where the world feels older than the names of cities. Heroes keep moving. Their ships cross the same seas the Titans once ruled in an earlier life. Wilder age. And as new conflicts gather, the gods look down from Olympus, sometimes helping, sometimes interfering, always keeping the world a little unsettled, so stories have room to happen. After the fleece is brought home, the myth does not let the travelers simply sit by a hearth. The Argo itself becomes a kind of living memory. It is hauled onto land, its timbers drying and creaking, and people touch it as if they can feel the sea still trapped inside the wood. Jason and Medea, however, carry a different kind of sea inside them, a restless tide. In Iolcus, Medea tricks Peleus's daughters with a promise. She shows them how a cut-up old ram can be boiled and, in the story's cruel magic, reassembled into something young. The daughters, desperate to help their father, do the same to Peleus. But Medea does not complete the spell. Peleus dies, and the throne is stained. Jason and Medea are driven away, because a city does not like to remember how it was changed. They settle in Corinth, and for a time they live like ordinary royalty, with children, with servants, with days that follow each other quietly. But the quiet is fragile. Jason begins to look toward another marriage, a political step that will make his life easier. He tells himself it is reasonable. Medea hears it as betrayal. The tragedy that follows is told in many tones. Some versions make Medea a monster. Some make her a wronged woman doing the worst thing she can imagine because she cannot bear being discarded. However you tell it, the end is the same kind of darkness that the Titans once brought into the world. A darkness that makes you understand why people cling to order. Jason is left alone, emptied. Years later, the story gives him an ending that is almost quiet. He sits beneath the old ship Argo, now rotting, now sagging, now more like driftwood than a vessel. A beam falls and strikes him. The hero who crossed the world for a shining prize dies under his own past. It is the myth's way of saying that some journeys do not end at the shoreline. They end when memory finally stops holding you up. Theseus also finds that a king's life is not a clean victory. He fights the Amazons, women warriors said, to live beyond the familiar lands. Sometimes he takes their queen, Antiope or Hippolyta, and brings her to Athens. A war follows, because taking someone is never simple, and the city learns that triumph can invite retaliation. Theseus marries again, to Phaedra, and the house becomes tangled. Phaedra falls in love with Hippolytus, Theseus's son. Hippolytus rejects her, and shame turns into accusation. Theseus curses his own son, asking Poseidon to punish him, and the curse works too well. A bull rises from the sea. Horses panic, and Hippolytus is dragged to death. Only afterward does Theseus learn the truth. His power has harmed what he loves, just as Heracles' strength once did. Kings, the myths suggest, are often just men holding sharper tools. In the later years, Theseus is drawn into the story of his friend Pirithous. Pirithous is bold, hungry for the kind of fame that does not know its limits. He and Theseus vow to marry daughters of Zeus. They kidnap young Helen from Sparta, planning to wait until she is older, an act that sounds like a seed being planted for a future war. Then Pirithous insists on something even wilder. He wants Persephone, queen of the underworld. They descend, as Heracles once did, but without Heracles' strength or permission. Hades welcomes them politely, offers them seats, and when they sit, the chairs hold them fast. They are trapped, not by chains, but by a kind of underworld law, as if the dead have their own gravity. Theseus will be rescued in some tellings, pulled free by Heracles during the Cerberus labor. Pirithous remains, because some mistakes do not come with an exit. Stories like these circle the same deep lessons. Pride invites punishment. Love invites pain. Cleverness saves you, then leaves you with guilt. And beneath all of it, the older powers remain. Hades is an Olympian, but his realm feels tangent old. The sea answers Poseidon, but the sea still remembers Okeanos. The sun still rises with Helios, steady and indifferent. Even Daedalus, the maker of the labyrinth, cannot escape consequences. After helping Ariadne and Theseus, he is trapped by King Minos. He crafts wings of feathers and wax and flies away with his son Icarus. The flight is beautiful, silent except for the wind, but Icarus flies too high. The wax melts, and he falls into the sea. Daedalus reaches safety with grief in his mouth. Another lesson. Another echo, even invention, cannot cancel the weight of the world. By the time these tales have spread, Greece feels full of heroes and warnings. Each city has its own pride, its own patron god, its own old wound. And somewhere beyond the hills, in Sparta, Helen grows up, and her beauty becomes a kind of destiny. Small choices, small betrayals, small omissions, they gather like clouds, and the air begins to taste like coming war. Helen's origin is told like a shimmer. Zeus comes to Leda as a swan, bright and strange. And from that meeting, eggs are laid. and from the eggs children hatch, as if divinity refuses ordinary birth. Helen is one of them, and even as a girl, she draws attention the way the moon draws tides. In another part of Greece, a wedding is planned, one that seems peaceful, almost like a pause. The sea nymph Thetis is to marry Pallas. Thetis is not a titan, but she belongs to the older watery family that existed before Olympus became a palace. There is also a prophecy around her, and in some tellings it is Prometheus who knows it, that Thetis would bear a son greater than his father. Zeus, hearing this, steps back. He will not risk producing a rival. So Thetis is given to a mortal, and Achilles is born from that careful decision. The wedding feast gathers gods and guests, and for a moment the world looks orderly. Then Eris, spirit of strife, is not invited. She comes anyway, because exclusion is a door that always opens into trouble. She throws down a golden apple marked for the fairest. Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite reach for it, and their rivalry becomes a quiet knife under the table. To settle the quarrel, they choose a judge, a young prince named Paris. Far away in Troy, the choice seems small, almost silly, like a beauty contest. But myths love to show how small sparks can find dry forests. By the time the apple is rolled to a stop, the next great story is already awake. Quiet. Part 7 equals Paris of Troy grows up away from the palace. A prophecy said he would bring ruin to the city, so he is exposed on a mountainside. But he survives and is raised among shepherds. He learns the quiet skills of watching weather and listening to animals, and he becomes handsome, gentle, and a little dreamy. When the gods bring him the apple of discord, he is not ready for how heavy a choice can be. Hera offers him power. Athena offers him victory and wisdom in war. Aphrodite offers him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chooses Aphrodite, because desire is often louder than caution. The apple does not glow in his hand after that. It feels ordinary. And that is the dangerous part. Ordinary choices can open extraordinary doors. The woman Aphrodite promises is Helen of Sparta. Helen is married to Menelaus, and many princes once competed for her hand to prevent endless fighting. They swore an oath to defend the chosen husband if anyone tried to steal Helen away. It is a clever human agreement, meant to keep peace, yet it becomes the mechanism that gathers an army. Paris travels to Sparta as a guest. Menelaus welcomes him, because guest friendship is sacred, guarded by Zeus himself. The halls are warm, the wine is sweet, and the days feel calm. But Aphrodite works like a current under the surface. Helen and Paris are drawn together, and whether you tell it as love, seduction, or divine coercion, the result is the same. Paris leaves Sparta with Helen and with treasure, breaking the rules of hospitality and lighting the first torch. Menelaus calls on the oath. Kings and heroes arrive one by one, like waves hitting the shore. Agamemnon, Menelaus's brother, takes command. Odysseus comes, reluctant and clever. Ajax comes, large and straightforward. Nestor comes, old and talkative, bringing memory of earlier days. And Achilles comes, the greatest fighter, still young, still half made of pride. Achilles is the son of Peleus and Thetis, and his story carries that older prophecy in its bones. Thetis, trying to protect him, hides him, or dips him in sacred water, depending on the version. Yet protection is never complete. Fate always finds an uncovered place. The Greek fleet gathers at Aulis, but the winds will not blow. A seer says Artemis is angry. The cause shifts with the telling, a boast, a broken promise, a careless act. To appease the goddess, Agamemnon must sacrifice his daughter, Iphigenia. It is one of those moments where the myth feels like a cold stone. A leader chooses victory over family, and the cost stains everything that follows. The ships finally sail. They land at Troy, a city with strong walls and strong pride. Year after year, the war drags on. There are raids, duels, bargaining attempts, broken truces. Sometimes the gods fight through the humans like hidden hands. Hera and Athena favor the Greeks. Aphrodite favors the Trojans. Apollo, bright and distant, sends plague when offended. Poseidon grumbles, because he once built Troy's walls and was not properly paid. In the 10th year, the Iliad begins, not with the first battle, but with an argument. Agamemnon takes a captive woman from Achilles as a prize, and Achilles feels insulted. His pride is wounded, and his withdrawal is like a door closing. He refuses to fight, and without him the Greeks begin to suffer. On the Trojan side, Hector steps forward. He is not a flawless man, but he is steady. He loves his wife, Andromache, and his baby son, and he also loves his city. He fights because he believes he must. When he meets Andromache on the walls, she begs him not to go back into battle. Hector holds his son, laughs when the baby fears his helmet, and then leaves anyway. It is one of the saddest quiet moments in all the myths, because you can feel how much he wants to stay. Patroclus, Achilles' friend, cannot endure watching Greeks die. He begs Achilles to return. And when Achilles refuses, Patroclus borrows Achilles' armor and leads the troops himself. For a moment, the Trojans think Achilles has returned, and they fall back. But Hector meets Patroclus, and the borrowed glory breaks. Patroclus dies. When Achilles hears the news, something changes in him. Pride becomes grief, and grief becomes a storm. He howls, and Thetis hears him from the sea. She rises to comfort him, but she cannot change what is coming. She knows his fate if he returns to battle. He will win glory and die young. If he goes home, he will live long and be forgotten. Achilles chooses the short, bright path, as if he would rather burn than fade. Hephaestus forges new armor for Achilles, and the shield is described like a world in miniature cities at peace, cities at war, fields, dances, rivers. It is a reminder that war happens inside a larger life that keeps going. Achilles returns and drives the Trojans back to the walls. He meets Hector outside the gates. Hector runs first, circling the city, because courage is not the absence of fear. At last he turns. They fight, and Achilles kills him. Then Achilles does something that shocks even those who expect brutality. He drags Hector's body behind his chariot. Grief can make a man cruel. Night after night, Hector's father Priam cannot sleep. At last he goes to the Greek camp, guided by Hermes, and kneels before Achilles, kissing the hands that killed his son. Priam asks for the body back. Achilles looks at him and sees his own father in the old man's face. Something softens. He returns Hector's body, and for a brief stretch, the war pauses for a funeral. The pause feels like the world taking one deep breath. Yet the war does not end there. Achilles will die, struck by an arrow, guided by Apollo, finding that one vulnerable point in his fate. Other heroes fall. Ajax dies in despair. Odysseus keeps scheming, because survival for him is always a matter of mind. The gods continue to argue above, like distant thunder. You can feel, in their quarrels, the old Titan pattern repeating, even after Zeus defeats his father Kronos, even after order is declared. Conflict remains part of the sky. The Olympians are not peace, they are power, and power has moods. Finally, the Greeks build a wooden horse, a hollow gift, smooth and silent. They pretend to sail away, leaving the horse on the beach. The Trojans debate. Some want to burn it. Some want to drag it inside as a trophy. Laocoon warns them, but his warning is drowned by snakes sent from the sea. The horse is pulled through the gates, and the city celebrates. That night, while Troy sleeps, the Greek warriors, hidden inside, climb out. They open the gates to the army that returned under cover of darkness. Fire spreads. Screams rise. The proud walls that held for 10 years are useless against a mind's trick. Aeneas, a Trojan prince, escapes carrying his father on his back and leading his son by the hand. Hecuba, Priam's queen, loses everything. Helen is found, and her story becomes another argument: is she guilty? Or is she a pawn of gods? Menelaus takes her back, because love and pride and politics not together again. The sack of Troy feels like the end of a world, and in a way it is. Yet myths do not stop. They flow onward into the returns, the homecomings that are not peaceful. When the smoke clears, the gods are still there. The sea is still there, and the old Titan foundations still hold the earth steady under the ash. Even victory has rules, and the Greeks break them. The Greeks break them. In the burning of Troy, Ajax the Lesser drags Cassandra from a temple, violating the sanctuary of Athena. Athena does not forget. In the old stories, a god's anger is like weather. It can change fast, but when it settles, it can last. Cassandra herself is another tragedy folded inside the larger one. Apollo gave her the gift of prophecy, and then, when she refused him, made it so no one would believe her. She warned Troy. She warned again and again. On the night the horse entered the city, she beat her hands on stone and cried out, and the crowd called her mad. Afterwards, she is taken as a prize by Agamemnon, as if a woman with true sight can still be treated like property. Her prophecies now become a private torment. When the Greeks finally sail home, the sea becomes their judge. Poseidon is angry at the arrogance of victors. Athena is angry at sacrilege. Zeus listens, weighing balances that no human can see. Storms rise, ships scatter. Men who survive 10 years of war drown within sight of their own shore. Agamemnon reaches home to Mycenae. But home is not a safe harbor. His wife Clytemnestra has waited for years with a wound that never healed. Agamemnon sacrificed their daughter Iphigenia to get a wind. While he was gone, Clytemnestra took a lover, Aegisthus, and together they built a new plan for the palace. Agamemnon returns like a man stepping into warm light, thinking the war is finally behind him. Then the trap closes. He is killed in his own house, and Cassandra is killed beside him. The story of the house of Atreus becomes its own long night. Orestes, son of Agamemnon, grows up carrying an order to avenge his father. He returns in secret, meets his sister, Electra, and together they kill Clytemnestra and Aegisthus. Afterward, Orestes is hunted by the Furies, ancient spirits of blood guilt. They are older than the Olympians in feeling, as if the Titans left behind not only bodies, but also laws of consequence. Orestes runs to Delphi, then to Athens, and at last Athena gives him a trial. The votes are tied, and Athena casts the deciding vote for mercy. Here the myth turns toward something new. It imagines justice not as endless revenge, but as a court, a set of voices, a balance. It is as if the old chaos is being slowly taught to sit down. Not every hero finds such resolution. Menelaus wanders for years before returning to Sparta with Helen. In some tellings, they drift to Egypt, delayed by storms and strange hospitality. They do come home, but the home is changed, because time is always a different kind of war. Neoptolemus, Achilles' son, survives the war and brings more blood with him. Achilles, who could not live long, still leaves behind a line that carries his fierceness. Thetis, his mother, mourns in the sea, and her grief feels like a tide that never fully retreats. One of the quietest, saddest aftermath stories belongs to the Trojan women. Andromache is taken away. Hecuba becomes a symbol of what war does to the powerless. Their names remain because people needed a way to speak about suffering without looking directly at their own city's cruelty. And then there is Odysseus. Odysseus is not the strongest, but he is the one whose mind never stops moving. During the war, he is essential. He finds Achilles. He negotiates. He invents. But the same cleverness that wins a war can also offend a god. After Troy falls, Odysseus sets sail for Ithaca. The distance is not far in a straight line, but myths do not travel in straight lines. They travel in circles, in storms, in detours shaped by divine grudges. Odysseus and his men stop to raid a coastal town, and their greed delays them. Then a wind blows them to the land of the lotus eaters, where the fruit makes memory dissolve. Odysseus drags his men back to the ship, because forgetting is a soft death. Next comes the Cyclops, Polyphemus, a giant with one eye. Living in a cave with his sheep, Odysseus enters, expecting hospitality. But the Cyclops eats men as if they are bread. Odysseus calls himself nobody. And when he blinds the Cyclops and escapes under the bellies of sheep, he proves again that names and tricks can be sharper than spears. Yet Odysseus cannot resist one more boast. As he sails away, he shouts his real name. Polyphemus prays to his father Poseidon, and the prayer sticks like salt. From that moment, the sea itself becomes a moving wall against Odysseus. These are the first steps of his long return, and the rest will stretch through islands and underworld shadows. The war has ended, but the myth is showing a different truth. For many people, the hardest part is not surviving the battle. It is finding your way back to who you were before the battle began. Above it all, the sky keeps its old routines. Helios still drives the sun. The stars still turn like slow wheels. Some titans are chained. Some are free. And some are simply woven into the background of everything. The world after Troy is still built on those deep foundations, and the stories keep walking across them, step by step, until the sound of marching finally fades into the sound of waves. Odysseus reaches the floating island of Aeolus, keeper of winds. Aeolus treats him kindly and gives him a leather bag tied tight, filled with every wind except the one that will blow him home. For days, Ithaca seems close. The shoreline is almost visible in the haze. But Odysseus falls asleep, and his men, exhausted and suspicious, believe the bag holds treasure. They open it. The winds burst out like birds released from a cage, screaming through the sails, spinning the ship around. In a single cruel hour, they are driven back to the sea they thought they had escaped. Aeolus refuses to help again. He thinks Odysseus must be hated by the gods, and he does not want that hatred to touch his own house. So Odysseus sails onward, carrying the heavy lesson that distrust can undo a miracle. They land among the Laestrygonians, giant people who throw rocks down from cliffs and spear sailors like fish. Most of the fleet is destroyed in the harbor, ships crushed and men screaming. Odysseus escapes with only one ship, and the sea around him feels suddenly enormous. At last he reaches the island of Circe. Circe is a sorceress, living in a house surrounded by tame wolves and lions, creatures that are not truly tame, only enchanted. She welcomes some of Odysseus's men and turns them into pigs with a drink that tastes sweet. Odysseus goes to rescue them, and Hermes meets him on the path, giving him an herb to resist the spell. Odysseus fasts Circe, and when her magic fails, she becomes less like a monster and more like a lonely immortal. She restores the men and keeps Odysseus for a year. The year is comfortable. Food is abundant. Beads are soft. But comfort can also be a trap, a lullaby that makes you forget the face of home. Odysseus finally insists on leaving, and Circe, surprisingly gentle, tells him the road ahead will lead down into the underworld itself. To find the way home, he must first speak with the dead. The ship pushes off again, and the oars dip in water that looks darker than it should. Behind them, Troy is now only smoke in memory. Ahead, the sea is a long corridor of tests. Between those two, Odysseus keeps moving, not knowing yet that his story will become the last great echo of the heroic age. The sails creak softly, and the men speak less. Night arrives, and the constellations look like old nails holding the sky in place. Steady, silent, watching, from above. Now, Part 8 equals Odysseus sails to the edge of the world, where the sea looks like dark metal and the air smells like wet stone. There is a shore that feels unfinished, as if it belongs more to night than to day. Here, he performs a ritual, digging a shallow pit, pouring offerings, speaking names with care. Shades rise like smoke, gathering close, whispering with voices that sound far away. He speaks first to Elpenor, a young man who fell from Circe's roof and died unnoticed. It is a small death in a big story, and that is why it matters. Odysseus promises burial, because the dead deserve to be remembered properly. Then he speaks to his mother, Anticleia, who died while he was gone. Her shade cannot be held. She is all distance. He tries to embrace her, and his arms close on air. At last the prophet Tiresias drinks the blood and speaks clearly. He tells Odysseus the path home is still possible, but only if he can control his men and himself. He warns about the cattle of Helios, the Titan sun. Even in the underworld, Helios matters. The sun is old law. Odysseus also sees famous dead. He sees Agamemnon, still bitter about his murder. He sees Achilles, who says he would rather be a living servant than a dead king. The line is quiet and sharp. Glory looks different from the far side. Odysseus leaves the underworld with his mind heavy. Circe gives him instructions like a mother giving directions for a dangerous road. First come the sirens, whose song is so beautiful it makes sailors steer into rocks just to get closer. Odysseus wants to hear it, because curiosity is part of who he is. But he also wants to live. He plugs his men's ears with wax and has them tie him to the mast. As the ship passes, the sirens sing of knowledge and home and the sweet taste of being understood. Odysseus strains against the ropes, weeping and furious. But the knots hold. The song fades behind them like a dream you almost remember in the morning. Next comes a narrow strait with Scylla on one side and Charybdis on the other. Scylla is a many-headed creature that snatches sailors from the deck. Charybdis is a whirlpool that swallows the sea. Circe warned him that he cannot avoid both. Odysseus chooses to sail closer to Scylla, losing a few men rather than everyone. It is a painful choice, a leader deciding which wound to accept. Afterward, they reach the island of Helios, where sacred cattle graze. Calm and gleaming, Odysseus warns his men again and again not to touch them. But storms trap them on the island, and hunger makes patience thin. While Odysseus sleeps, the men slaughter the cattle, telling themselves the gods will understand. Helios sees everything. He complains to Zeus. When the ship leaves the island, Zeus sends a storm that breaks it to pieces. Odysseus is the only survivor, clinging to wreckage, floating like driftwood with a heartbeat. The sea carries him to Calypso, a nymph on an island where vines hang heavy and birds call in the trees. Calypso loves him and offers immortality if he stays. Years pass. The island is beautiful, but beauty can be lonely. Odysseus sits on the shore and stares at the horizon until his eyes ache. At last, the gods decide he has suffered enough. Hermes brings the order, and Calypso, crying, helps him build a raft. Poseidon sees him again and raises a storm out of spite. Odysseus is thrown into the water, swallowed by waves, then saved by a sea goddess who gives him a veil, a small piece of magic that keeps him afloat. He reaches the land of the Phaeacians. Exhausted, barely human, Nausicaa, a princess, finds him while washing clothes by the river. She is kind and practical. The Phaeacians are skilled sailors, living close to the gods in spirit, if not in blood. They feed Odysseus, listen to his story, and then, in the gentlest act of the whole epic, they take him home while he sleeps. They lay him on Ithaca's shore, like a child returned to a cradle. When Odysseus wakes, he does not recognize home at first. Athena appears, disguised, and then reveals herself. She has watched his mind with interest for years. She tells him the palace is filled with suitors who eat his food and harass his wife, Penelope, insisting Odysseus must be dead. Penelope holds them off with clever delay, weaving a shroud by day and unraveling it by night, buying time with thread. Athena disguises Odysseus as an old beggar. He walks into his own hall, unseen, hearing strangers laugh where his children once played. Only his old dog, Argos, recognizes him. Argos lifts his head, wags his tail, and dies, as if he waited only for that one last confirmation. Odysseus keeps his anger quiet. He tests loyalties, watching who offers kindness to a beggar and who kicks him. He meets his son Telemachus in secret, and they plan together like two hands finally joining. Penelope, still cautious, announces a contest. Whoever can string Odysseus's great bow and shoot an arrow through a line of axe heads will win her. The suitors try. The bow will not bend for them. Then the old beggar asks to try. Laughter fills the room. Odysseus takes the bow, and it fits his hand the way a familiar tool fits a craftsman. He strings it with ease. He shoots. The arrow sings through the axe heads, and in that instant, the room changes shape. The beggar is no longer a beggar. Odysseus and Telemachus, with a few loyal servants, lock the doors. The suitors realize too late that they are trapped in the feast they stole. Arrows fly. The floor becomes slick. It is violent. And the violence is part of the myth's hard logic. A house, once corrupted, is cleaned with blood. Afterward, Odysseus hangs the disloyal maids, and the story does not look away. When the killing is done, Odysseus finally faces Penelope. She does not rush into his arms. She tests him, because she has lived too long in uncertainty to trust easily. She orders their marriage bed to be moved, and Odysseus protests, because the bed is built around a living olive tree and cannot be moved. That detail, known only to them, breaks the last wall. Penelope accepts him, and the reunion is quiet, like rain finally falling after drought. Even then, peace is not immediate. The families of the suitors want revenge. Odysseus goes out to meet them, and another cycle of blood threatens to begin. Athena intervenes, and Zeus supports her. They force a truce, as if the gods are tired of the same argument repeating. For a moment, the island becomes still. Odysseus visits his father Laertes, old and bent, working in an orchard. He reveals himself slowly, carefully, because old hearts can break from joy as well as grief. Laertes weeps and holds his son, and the story gives you one last human touch, a father and son under trees, sharing the simple fact of being alive. After Odysseus, the heroic age thins out. The great wars are over. The great voyages are told and retold until the edge is smooth. People keep looking up at the sky, watching the sun wheel across, watching Helios do his ancient work. Titans may be chained in distant darkness, but their names live in the world ocean in every wave. Mnemosyne in every act of memory. Prometheus in every spark. Atlas in every idea of burden. And so the myths settle into something like a map of the human mind. They explain why storms feel personal, why pride can ruin a city, why love can build and destroy, why home matters so much. Underneath, the old Titan story is still there. The first great family drama that shook the universe and then sank into the foundation. Now, if you want to let the night take you, imagine the world after all these struggles. Imagine the sea smoothing itself. Imagine the stars steady, each one a small point of light that does not hurry. Imagine Atlas far away, still holding the sky, not in anger, but in endless patience. Imagine Kronos deep in shadow, no longer ruling, only existing. And imagine humans, small and bright, telling these stories beside fires, using them as blankets against the dark. Because that is what myths do in the end. They do not solve everything. They simply stay with you, like a voice speaking softly until you fall asleep. Before Odysseus reaches Ithaca, his son Telemachus grows up in a house full of strangers. Every day the suitors eat the best meat and drink the best wine. And every day Telemachus is reminded that a boy without a father is treated like an unfinished man. Penelope protects him as best she can, but she cannot stop the laughter in the hall. Athena visits Telemachus as well, taking the shape of a friend. She tells him to seek news of his father and, more importantly, to seek his own spine. So Telemachus takes a ship and sails away from Ithaca, leaving his mother behind with fear and hope mixed together like smoke. He goes first to Pylos, to old Nestor, who remembers the war as if it happened yesterday. Nestor speaks in long waves of words, naming ships, naming men, naming mistakes. From him, Telemachus learns that a hero can survive a battle and still be lost afterward. Then he goes to Sparta, to Menelaus and Helen, who live in a palace bright with wealth and haunted by memory. Helen recognizes Telemachus by his face, because faces carry family-like signatures. Menelaus tells him about the long drifting after Troy, about being delayed in foreign lands, about hearing rumors of Odysseus trapped somewhere far away. Helen adds her own strange perspective, as if she is both inside the story and watching it from a distance. Telemachus leaves with gifts, but the real gift is confidence. He has stepped into the world and returned. Back on the sea, Odysseus endures Calypso's island with a patience that tastes like stone. Calypso's cave is fragrant. Her voice is soothing. Yet each evening, Odysseus walks to the shore and sits where the foam reaches his feet. He stares west, measuring distance by the way the light changes. The island offers immortality, But immortality without home feels like a long room with no door. When he finally builds his raft, the work is slow and practical. He cuts trees, fits boards, ties them with rope, and the simple labor feels like sanity. Then the storm comes, and the raft shatters, and Odysseus is back in the sea. That great moving judge, he fights the water with arms that have fought everything else. At last, when the Phaeacian shore appears, he crawls onto land and sleeps under leaves like a hunted animal. The Phaeacians do not understand war the way the Greeks do. They love ships and songs and games. In their hall, a bard named Demodocus sings. He sings of Troy, and Odysseus weeps behind his hands. The king notices and asks why. Odysseus is forced to name himself, to bring his whole long tale into the light. After he speaks, the Phaeacians give him gifts: bronze, cloth, a golden cup, and prepare a ship. They place him aboard, arrange the blankets, and as the oars begin to move, Odysseus falls asleep. It is a sleep so deep, it feels like being returned to the beginning. In that sleep, the story becomes gentle for a moment. When the Phaeacian sailors return home, Poseidon turns their ship to stone as punishment for helping his enemy. The image is sharp, a vessel becoming a rock, as if the sea is saying, "Do not cross me." The Phaeacians accept it with quiet resignation, because in myths, even good deeds can have costs. On Ithaca, the revenge is only the visible part of Odysseus's return. The hidden part is the slow rebuilding of trust. Penelope has lived inside a siege for years, and siege habits do not vanish overnight. Telemachus has practiced being hard, because softness could be exploited. Odysseus himself has learned to lie as naturally as breathing. Home asks him to become honest again, and that can be harder than sailing past monsters. Tiresias's prophecy also lingers. He told Odysseus that once he settled things in Ithaca, he would have to travel inland, carrying an oar, until he met people who did not know the sea. There, he would plant the oar in the ground and make peace with Poseidon. It is a strange ending for a sailor to walk away from salt and waves and learn the taste of dry earth. Some versions say Odysseus does this. He walks through valleys and over ridges, the oar on his shoulder like a sign. At last he meets a farmer who thinks the oar is a winnowing fan, and Odysseus knows he has reached the place. He sets the oar in the ground, offers sacrifice, and the old anger of the sea god finally loosens. Afterward, the story does not shout. It simply fades into ordinary years, as if the greatest adventure ends not with a trumpet, but with a quiet meal. And beyond Odysseus, other tales continue. Softer at the edges, Aeneas, carrying his father from burning Troy, wanders and eventually becomes part of another people's origin story. Far later, Romans will call Kronos by another name, Saturn, and imagine him as a god of an old golden age. In that way, the Titans are never truly gone. They change masks, shift languages, and keep walking through history. So when you hear the Titan names again, Helios, Atlas, Mnemosyne, Ocean, you can think of them as deep notes in music. The melody changes, the singers change, but the low notes keep humming under everything. Now let the humming become a lullaby. Let the sea be far away. Let the old wars be stories told by a fire that has already turned to embers. Let your own thoughts settle, one by one, like birds folding their wings. Look up in the imagination, and you can see how the Greeks tried to store these stories in the sky. They placed Orion among the stars, a hunter still walking. They placed the Great Bear, the Pleiades, the bright line of the Milky Way, and they said it was spilled milk or a road of souls, depending on the night. They turned a ship into a constellation. They turned a crown into a constellation. They turned a serpent into a constellation, because the sky is the safest place to keep a tail. Nothing up there can be stolen from your table. And under the constellations, the earth continues in its slow habits. Olive trees grow. Wind moves through reeds. Fishermen pull nets and do not think about Poseidon unless the waves rise. Farmers watch the sun and do not think about Helios unless the heat becomes too strong. Yet the old names are still there, ready to be spoken when someone needs meaning. Perhaps that is the final gift of the Titan story. It begins with vast beings fighting for the shape of the universe, and it ends with humans using those vast images to explain small feelings. Anger becomes a thunder god. Memory becomes a Titan mother. Time becomes an old king in chains. And all of it becomes a way to say, gently, that you are not alone in your fear, or your hope, or your longing for home. Soft and quiet, sleep